Thanks for staying with us. This is Newsline, and I'm talking to Mr. Cheung Yuck-Seng, who's the president of the Legislative Council. Mr. Cheung, right, before the break, we talked about minimum wage. This is going to be a very hot issue. What is going to be the level, whether some say it's going to be $28, $29 an hour. The unions are not very happy with that. But the other issue, in fact, there are many issues that are now in Hong Kong that make many people feel we have become a very polarized, very divided society. You, as the president of the Legislative Council, you see that when you chair meetings, when you have council meetings, you've got the politicians on both sides, and you've got people like the Democratic Party and long hair and so on, and they're saying we've become a very divided society, the rich against the poor, and that's why they throw things bananas at the chief executive and disrupt your meetings, and you have a hard time trying to get them back into order again, right? But you tell me this, as the president, you can look down there and you see all the legislative members, they are representing their different constituencies.
Yes.
You must get the view that there are many people who feel we have a very divided society in Hong Kong now, right? Property prices is one. People can't afford to buy homes.
But of course, that's the reality. We have, people are not happy with the government. People are not happy with the public policies for various reasons. I mean, there have been numerous debates in the Legislative Council on issues like the wealth gap, and of course, as you pointed out, property prices. I believe that that will be one important issue the chief executive will have to deal with in his new policy address. And by the way, the new legislative session will begin with the policy address.
That's correct.
And everybody's waiting. Everybody's waiting. This reminds me of the situation back in 1997, when everybody was waiting for the then Chief Executive Tung Chee-hwa to make his first policy address. And you remember, again, the property market had been going wild that year. And everybody was waiting for Mr. Tong to come up with measures to sort of cool down the property market. And then he came up with these
new policies for
85,000
home ownership flats, and that killed the market. Yeah.
And but to be fair, when Mr. Tong first announced this policy, he's not going to take any really tough measure, but was going to make sure that there will be enough supply. Everybody thought that was not enough. Everybody thought that it would be useless. It could not sort of cool down the property market. And then, of course, the Asian financial crisis, and then the
and then that's history. But you tell me this, Mr. Cheung, do we have a very polarized society now?
We do. I think it is an undeniable fact that the gap between the rich and the poor has been widening in the past decade or so.
And it's an unfair society.
Well, maybe there are, compared with other societies, compared with places elsewhere, we may not be the most unfair society. Even compared with those with full democracy.
Okay.
Right? But then people are not happy. This is.
How do you fix that? How do you make that so we can narrow the wealth gap? Do we have a society in Hong Kong where the property developers are too powerful for
How do we fix that? Ask the chief executive, or ask the prospective future chief executives. Huh?
But you don't have any. I mean, okay. People say the property developers are too powerful. The prices are being jacked up.
Let me tell you this. Personally, of course, I have my own views. I have my very strong feelings about, the housing policy, about the property market in Hong Kong. But my colleagues in the LegCo will scream at me the moment I start talking about,
But these are your personal views.
These are personal views, and the LegCo president is deprived of the right to speak his personal views on any controversial public policy. But
I can still ask you, Mr. Cheung, do you think that the property developers are too powerful, that we need to start cooling the market? Because you're having a situation where people are either living in government subsidized homes or nowhere because they have to pay very high rents or buy houses that they can afford.
I guess
they're being squeezed.
I guess I won't be breaking any rules if I tell what most people would accept as the truth,
and the
the reality.
Is,
The truth is, of course, we all see that the big developers in Hong Kong, they are very powerful. This is one thing.
Absolutely.
The truth is that I think the government is much more worried about any unfavorable factor to the property market than the fact that many people are paying
exorbitant rents or can afford to buy
prices,
a home. Yeah.
Right?
So
the fact is, many people, in a well-developed economy like Hong Kong, right, we still have many people, many families living in terrible conditions,
in cage homes,
in shameful
sure, absolutely,
conditions. And this is the reality.
But you're then saying, Mr. Cheung, which is many people have said that the government would rather not have an unfavorable reaction to the property market than to help the people get homes. That's not a very good leadership government because they have put more priority on protecting developers.
I believe that every government has its own beliefs. We have repeatedly been told by the government, it's a firm believer
in the free market.
In the free market, right? Minimum government intervention. Only, of course, in an area like the property market, you can't really have free competition.
Because
free competition.
There is no free.
Everybody can see that.
There is no free competition. There is a monopoly here with a few property developers.
And if we look back throughout the past decades, actually the property market is one area in which the government has always been interfering very deeply.
But do you agree that the property market is not being controlled just by a few handful of big developers?
Well, I mean, I can't say anything more than what is obvious to the public.
Okay, well, that means I'll take that as a yes. But I'm going to move on now. One of the other things that's going to happen, and you're going to be dealing with this LegCo session coming up, where you're going to have a debate on big issues, as you pointed out. Also, we're going to have elections in 2012,
yes,
where you're going to have 10 new legislative councillors coming in, 5 of them through the district councils, they're so-called super legislators. How is that going to change politics in Hong Kong?
Well, I haven't really thought about that in a systematic, scientific way yet. But my feeling is, yes, there will be 10 more seats, but I believe that what you may call the political landscape won't change a lot. I think on the whole, considering the way the new seats will be returned, the balance between the pro-government camp and the Democrats, let's say.
You're not going to say anti-government.
will remain more or less the same.
Okay.
Will remain more or less
the same. So there's not going to be a big change.
So the most important factor, I believe, affecting the results of the 2012 elections would be the the political climate in Hong Kong in general, say whether the government remained a weak one, or whether the government is more popular or unpopular than
Is the
it is now.
government weak now, would you say? Is it a lame duck government?
I wouldn't use the term lame duck, but I think many people have the impression that the government perhaps is not able, or perhaps not too willing, to do what it should be doing.
Is it able or willing? There's a big difference between that.
No, I mean,
Is Donald Trump unable or unwilling to do what it should be doing?
But there's a very important connection between the two, because if the government believes that it is not going to get enough support from the legislature to get things done, then it is pointless putting it forth.
So you're saying that we basically now have in fact, that amounts to a lame duck government?
I'm not saying that that is the case. I'm not saying that that is the case. I mean, we still remember.
Yeah.
We still had the very controversial constitutional reform package endorsed by the LegCo. Now that was quite
that was an achievement,
accomplishment.
and I'm going to ask you that Democrats endorsed it, but Anson Chan, former chief secretary, just said a few days back that the Democrats had undercut the chief executive by dealing directly with Beijing. Do you agree with that?
I wouldn't want to comment on any remarks made by Mrs. Chan.
But is it right for the Democrats to deal with Beijing?
I think it is fair to listen to the explanations by the Democrats as well as by the government, right?
So we should deal directly with Beijing.
We all know. We all know. I mean, the Democratic Party was not. They were actually not bypassing the SAR government. As the government has pointed out, the SAR government did play a role in this kind of dialogue, facilitating this dialogue between various groups in Hong Kong and the central government. I mean, I would say that the chief executive, if anything, should be happy.
And should be thankful, right. Yeah. Okay, I've got 30 seconds. I'm going to ask you one last question. You're now the president of the Legislative Council. When there are going to be elections in 2012, are you going to run again?
Well, this is a big question. I haven't decided yet. Of course, it is not for me to decide on my own. I have to consult my party
But you've got to run for LegCo as a LegCo member and then run for president. You've got to do two things.
Yes. And if I run for a LegCo seat in 2012, some colleagues of mine, they have expressed their view that I should run for one of those, what you call
the Super 5 seats.
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to end it right there. Thanks for watching. See you next week. Thank you.